The greenhouse at the edge of Margate Hollow had been closed off for decades, its wrought iron frame overtaken by vines and neglect. Locals said it was abandoned after the Wren family vanished. Some whispered about botched cultivation experiments, others about voices heard among the wilted dahlias. Now, with its glass panes fogged by mildew and time, it stood like a mausoleum to flora no longer living. Mara found herself drawn to it on the 7th morning after her return to town, compelled by dreams she'd never had as a child, but which now pulsed through her skull at dawn. The lock looked rusted shut, yet when she pushed, the door yawned open with a moan, the hinges weeping as if waking from a long slumber. Inside, the air was impossibly moist, smelling not of decay but of deep soil and breathing leaves that shouldn't be able to live in such darkness. Thin shafts of light pierced through cracked panels high overhead, illuminating strange, bulbous plants with leaves like stretched skin and veins pulsing beneath. Her footsteps echoed softly on the stone path, but it wasn't just the sound of her shoes. There was a secondary rhythm, a whisper of movement just beyond her peripheral vision. A row of ancient orchids seemed to crane toward her as she passed, their petals yawning open in an unsettling mimic of mouths. Mara paused at a large planter that once housed an azalea bush. Instead, something tongue-colored unfurled from the soil, twitching toward her palm with almost blind precision. She pulled her hand back, heart thudding, convinced for a brief second she'd imagined it, until it recoiled subtly, like a creature denied. There were no bugs in the air, no birdsong, no echo of the world outside. Only the beating, breathing silence of things that had never really stopped growing. The journals she found stacked by the broken worktable made no sense at first, scribbles in numbers, then drawings of root systems overlaid with human nervous systems, followed by fully sketched diagrams of what seemed to be internal organs sprouting from vines. The name at the bottom of every page clenched her chest tighter: Edgar Wren. Her childhood friend, 10 years older, who had vanished long before the greenhouse was sealed. Rumors had said he'd run off to bury himself in solitude, maybe madness, but what if he'd never left this place? The final entries weren't even written in ink but something that had soaked into the pages from the very fiber, a deep, rusted hue that dried in patterns curiously resembling fingerprints. One passage, almost obscured by smeared markings, read, "It listens now. It doesn't need light. It remembers who watered it." Mara dropped the page and turned, feeling watched without sound. She explored deeper, where moisture dripped rhythmically from overhead beams into slick puddles that reflected twisted, overgrown ferns. The path was less clear here, muddled by broken clay pots and trellises bent sideways by impossible pressure. At the far end, where sunlight dared not reach, a door, unmarked and half buried behind climbing ivy, stood slightly ajar. The hinges screeched when she nudged it, revealing a repurposed space filled with hanging roots that swayed, although no air moved. In the center sat what looked like a chair made of bark and bone, surrounded by rotting books and glass jars filled with cloudy fluid. One had an eyeball still floating, the cornea cloudy, pupil dilated toward her. On the armrest rested a single, dark red bloom pulsing in tune with her heartbeat. She backed away slowly, afraid sudden motion would excite whatever else might be waiting in the shadows beyond. A low hum began to rise from beneath the floorboards, subtle at first, like a purring engine, but soon vibrating the very air in her lungs. The leaves on the surrounding shrubs rustled although the air remained dead still. Then, from within the planters, delicate stems began to rise, carrying buds too heavy, bobbing softly as if under the weight of consciousness. Her hands trembled against her sides as the voice came, not through her ears, but directly inside her skull, pressing against her thoughts like a wet cloth. "You came back. You were always meant to return." Her knees buckled, the floor slick beneath her. Something reached up to catch her, a root, warm and supple, curling gently around her wrist like an invitation. Terrified, she yanked away, but it didn't tighten, not yet. Instead, it lingered in the air between them like a memory too familiar to distrust entirely. Mara fled, crashing through the foliage toward the entrance, but the greenhouse no longer obeyed the laws of the space she'd entered. The aisles had rearranged. The shapes of petals now resembled hands, the trellises arching to form tunnels that led back where she'd started. The air grew thicker with each breath, heavier, murmuring with phrases her ears could not pin down. She finally stumbled into a clearing where the ceiling had shattered, moonlight spilling in uneven beams over the face of someone kneeling in the soil. It was Edgar, or something wearing his skin. He smiled at her, eyes blooming with iris-colored flowers, and extended his dirt-caked hand. "I found a way to keep growing," he whispered. Behind him, the ground swelled as if something was about to surface, and the greenhouse door slammed shut on its own.